for today's comprehensive exploration of effective communication skills. In this special 1-hour episode, we're going to dive deep into the art and science of communicating effectively in English, covering everything from active listening and clear expression to nonverbal communication and conflict resolution. Communication is arguably the most important skill in both personal and professional life. Whether you're giving a presentation at work, having a heart-to-heart conversation with a friend, or navigating a difficult situation with a colleague, your ability to communicate effectively can make or break the outcome. For English learners, mastering communication skills goes beyond just grammar and vocabulary. It's about understanding the nuances of how people actually interact in English-speaking environments. Today's episode is designed to transform you from someone who simply speaks English into someone who communicates powerfully and persuasively in English. We'll explore proven techniques that native speakers use, common communication pitfalls to avoid, and practical strategies you can implement immediately to become a more confident and effective communicator. Let's begin by understanding what effective communication really means. Many people think communication is just about speaking clearly or having a large vocabulary, but that's only part of the picture. Effective communication is a two-way process that involves not just transmitting your message, but ensuring it's received and understood the way you intended. Think about it this way. Communication is like a bridge. You're on one side with your thoughts, ideas, and feelings, and the other person is on the opposite side with their own perspective and understanding. The goal is to build a strong bridge that allows your message to travel safely across and reach them exactly as you meant it. The key components of effective communication include clarity of message, active listening, empathy, appropriate tone and timing, and the ability to adapt your communication style to your audience. Throughout today's episode, we'll explore each of these elements in detail and learn how to master them in English. One thing that makes communication particularly challenging for English learners is that much of what we communicate isn't actually spoken. Research suggests that up to 93% of communication is nonverbal, including body language, tone of voice, and facial expressions. This means that becoming an effective communicator in English requires attention to much more than just words. Let's start with the foundation of all good communication, listening. Now, you might be thinking, Emma, I'm learning English. Shouldn't I focus on speaking? While speaking is important, listening is actually the secret weapon of great communicators. When you listen effectively, you gather information that helps you respond more appropriately, you show respect for the other person, and you create an environment where real communication can happen. But here's the thing, most people aren't really listening. They're waiting for their turn to talk, thinking about what they're going to say next, or judging what they're hearing. True active listening is a skill that requires practice and intention. Active listening involves several key techniques. First, give your full attention to the speaker. This means putting away distractions like your phone, making appropriate eye contact, and positioning your body to show you're engaged. In English-speaking cultures, maintaining eye contact while listening shows respect and interest, though be mindful not to stare intensely. Second, use verbal and nonverbal cues to show you're listening. Nod occasionally. Say things like, I see, that's interesting, or tell me more. These small acknowledgments encourage the speaker to continue and show that you're actively engaged with what they're saying. Third, practice reflective listening. This means occasionally paraphrasing what you've heard to confirm your understanding. You might say, so if I understand correctly, you're saying that, or it sounds like you're feeling frustrated because. This technique not only ensures you've understood correctly, but also shows the speaker that you're really paying attention. Now let's talk about asking questions effectively. Questions are powerful tools in communication. They can gather information, show interest, clarify understanding, and even influence the direction of a conversation. For English learners, mastering different types of questions can significantly improve your communication effectiveness. Open-ended questions are your best friends in conversation. These are questions that can't be answered with a simple yes or no and encourage the other person to share more information. Instead of asking, did you like the movie, try, what did you think about the movie? Or, how did the movie make you feel? These questions invite deeper responses and richer conversations. Clarifying questions help ensure you understand what someone means. Use phrases like, could you explain what you mean by? Or, when you say X, do you mean? Don't be embarrassed to ask for clarification. It shows you care about understanding correctly, and most people appreciate it. Follow-up questions demonstrate that you're not just hearing the words, but actually processing the information. If someone mentions they had a challenging day at work, instead of just saying, "Oh, that's too bad," you might ask, "What made it particularly challenging?" This shows genuine interest, and follow-up questions demonstrate that you're not just hearing the words, but actually processing the information. If someone mentions they had a challenging day at work, instead of just saying, "Oh, that's too bad," you might ask, "What made it particularly challenging?" This shows genuine interest and often leads to more meaningful conversations. Hypothetical questions can be useful for exploring ideas and possibilities. Questions like, "What would happen if?" or "How do you think you would handle it if?" can help people think through situations and often reveal deeper insights about their values and perspectives. Emma, let's move on to expressing yourself clearly and persuasively. Clear expression starts with organizing your thoughts before you speak. This is especially important when English isn't your first language. Taking a moment to structure your ideas can make a huge difference in how effectively you communicate. One helpful framework is the PREP method: point, reason, example, point. Start by stating your main point clearly, then give your reason or reasoning, provide a specific example to illustrate your point, and finish by restating your main point. This structure helps ensure your message is clear and memorable. For instance, instead of rambling about why you think remote work is beneficial, you might say, "I believe remote work increases productivity, point. When people work from home, they have fewer distractions and can focus better on their tasks, reason. For example, since our company introduced flexible remote work, our team's project completion rate has increased by 30%, example. So overall, I think remote work is a valuable tool for improving productivity, point." Word choice is crucial for clear communication. Choose specific, concrete words over vague generalities. Instead of saying something is good or bad, be more precise. Is it excellent, satisfactory, disappointing, or unacceptable? The more specific you are, the clearer your communication becomes. Pay attention to your pace and pronunciation. Speaking too quickly can make you difficult to understand, especially for other non-native speakers. Conversely, speaking too slowly might make you sound uncertain or patronizing. Find a comfortable pace that allows you to pronounce words clearly while maintaining natural rhythm. Now let's explore the crucial topic of adapting your communication style to different situations and audiences. This is where intermediate communicators really shine. They understand that effective communication isn't one size fits all. Consider your audience carefully. Are you speaking to a close friend, a colleague, your boss, or a stranger? Each situation calls for different levels of formality, different vocabulary choices, and different approaches. With friends, you might use casual language, idioms, and humor. In professional settings, you'll want to be more formal and precise. Cultural awareness is particularly important in English communication. English is spoken as a first or second language by billions of people around the world, each bringing their own cultural perspectives to communication. What seems direct and honest to one person might feel rude or aggressive to another. Learning to read these cultural cues and adapting accordingly is a valuable skill. For instance, context also matters enormously. A conversation at a casual coffee meeting will be very different from a formal presentation or a difficult conversation about a performance issue. Pay attention to the setting, the purpose of the communication, and the relationship dynamics involved. Consider the emotional state of your audience as well. If someone is stressed, upset, or distracted, they may not be able to process complex information effectively. In these situations, simplifying your message and showing empathy becomes more important than conveying every detail. Let's talk about something that many English learners struggle with: managing emotions in communication. Emotions are a natural part of human interaction, but they can either enhance or derail effective communication, depending on how they're handled. First, develop emotional awareness. Notice when you're feeling strong emotions like anger, frustration, excitement, or nervousness, and recognize how these emotions might be affecting your communication. When you're angry, you might speak more sharply or say things you don't mean. When you're nervous, you might speak too quickly or forget important points. Learn to pause when emotions are high. If you feel yourself getting upset during a conversation, it's perfectly acceptable to say, "I need a moment to collect my thoughts," or "Could we take a short break and return to this in a few minutes?" This pause can prevent you from saying something you'll regret later. Practice expressing emotions constructively. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," try, "I feel unheard when I share my ideas and don't get any feedback." This approach expresses your feeling without attacking the other person, making it more likely that they'll respond positively. Empathy is your secret weapon in emotional communication. Try to understand and acknowledge the other person's emotional state. Phrases like, "I can see this is frustrating for you," or "It sounds like this situation is really stressful," show that you recognize their feelings, even if you don't necessarily agree with their perspective. Emma, now let's dive into nonverbal communication, which is particularly challenging for language learners but absolutely crucial for effective communication. Your body language, facial expressions, and vocal tone often communicate more than your actual words. Eye contact is fundamental in English-speaking cultures, but it needs to be balanced. Too little eye contact can make you seem disinterested, dishonest, or lacking confidence. Too much can feel aggressive or uncomfortable. Aim for natural eye contact. Look at the person while they're speaking, and when you're speaking, alternate between looking at them and occasionally looking away to gather your thoughts. Your posture communicates confidence and engagement. Stand or sit up straight, keep your shoulders relaxed, and face the person you're speaking with. Crossing your arms can signal defensiveness, while leaning slightly forward shows interest and engagement. Facial expressions should match your message. If you're discussing something serious, your expression should reflect that seriousness. If you're sharing good news, let your face show that joy. Inconsistency between your words and your expression can confuse your message. Vocal tone and pace are equally important. Your tone should match the content and context of your communication. A monotone delivery can make even exciting news sound boring, while an inappropriately cheerful tone during a serious discussion can seem insensitive. Gestures can enhance your communication, but be mindful of cultural differences. Some gestures that are normal in one culture might be offensive in another. When in doubt, observe how native speakers in your environment use gestures and follow their lead. Emma, let's talk about one of the most challenging aspects of communication, giving and receiving feedback. Whether it's in professional settings, personal relationships, or learning environments, the ability to exchange feedback effectively is crucial for growth and improvement. When giving feedback, start with the positive. Even if you need to address problems, beginning with what's working well helps create a receptive environment. This isn't about false praise. It's about recognizing genuine strengths before addressing areas for improvement. Be specific and behavior-focused rather than making general or personal criticisms. Instead of saying, "You're disorganized," try, "I noticed that the report deadline was missed and some of the supporting documents were difficult to find. How can we improve the organization process for next time?" This approach focuses on specific behaviors and invites collaboration on solutions. Use I statements to express your perspective without making the other person defensive. "I felt confused when the meeting agenda changed at the last minute" is less threatening than "You always change things without warning." When receiving feedback, resist the urge to become defensive immediately. Take a breath and try to listen for the valuable information, even if the delivery isn't perfect. Ask clarifying questions like, "Could you give me a specific example?" or "What would you suggest I do differently next time?" Remember that feedback is a gift, even when it's uncomfortable. The people who care enough to give you honest feedback are helping you grow and improve. Thank them for their input, even if you don't agree with everything they've said. Now let's explore conflict resolution and difficult conversations, skills that separate good communicators from great ones. Conflict is inevitable in human relationships, but it doesn't have to be destructive. When handled skillfully, conflict can actually strengthen relationships and lead to better solutions. The first step in conflict resolution is reframing your mindset. Instead of seeing conflict as a battle to be won, think of it as a problem to be solved together. This shift in perspective changes everything about how you approach the situation. Start difficult conversations with a clear intention. Are you trying to understand the other person's perspective? Find a solution to a problem. Express your feelings. Clear intentions help guide the conversation in a productive direction. Use the desk method for addressing conflicts. Describe the situation objectively. Express your feelings about it. Specify what you'd like to see happen, and identify the consequences, both positive outcomes if the issue is resolved and potential negative outcomes if it isn't. For example, when meetings start 15 minutes late, describe, I feel frustrated because it affects my schedule for the rest of the day. Express, I'd like us to start meetings on time or adjust the scheduled time if needed. This would help everyone manage their time better and make our meetings more productive. Consequences. Stay curious rather than judgmental. Ask questions to understand the other person's perspective. Often, what seems like unreasonable behavior makes perfect sense when you understand the full context. Emma, let's discuss public speaking and presentation skills, which are essential for professional success and personal confidence. Many people fear public speaking more than death, but with the right techniques, you can become a confident and effective presenter. Preparation is your best friend when it comes to public speaking. Know your material inside and out, but don't try to memorize every word. Instead, understand your key points thoroughly and practice different ways of explaining them. This flexibility allows you to adapt if you lose your place or need to adjust for your audience. Structure your presentation clearly. A classic structure is, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. This repetition helps your audience follow your logic and remember your key points. Start with a hook, something that grabs attention and makes people want to listen. This could be a surprising statistic, a thought-provoking question, a relevant story, or a bold statement. For example, instead of starting with, "Today I'm going to talk about time management," you might begin with, "How many of you checked your phone in the last 5 minutes?" That simple action reveals something crucial about how we manage our most precious resource, time. Use stories and examples liberally. Abstract concepts become memorable when illustrated with concrete examples. Stories engage emotions and help people connect with your message on a deeper level. Practice managing nervousness. It's normal to feel nervous before speaking publicly. Even experienced speakers get nervous. The key is learning to channel that energy productively. Deep breathing, positive visualization, and physical preparation, like doing some light stretching, can help manage anxiety. Emma, let's explore digital communication, which has become increasingly important in our connected world. Email, video calls, instant messaging, and social media each have their own communication norms and best practices. Email communication requires special attention to tone and clarity. Without vocal cues and body language, your written words carry the entire burden of communication. Be more explicit than you might be in face-to-face conversation. Use clear subject lines, organize your thoughts logically, and include context when referencing previous conversations. Pay attention to tone in written communication. What seems neutral to you might come across as cold or abrupt to others. When in doubt, err on the side of warmth and politeness. Phrases like, "I hope this email finds you well," or "Thank you for your time and consideration," help create a positive tone. Video call communication combines elements of both face-to-face and digital communication. Pay attention to your setup. Good lighting, a professional background, and clear audio make a significant difference. Look at the camera when speaking, not at the screen, to maintain the impression of eye contact. Be mindful of digital communication timing and frequency. Sending urgent emails late at night or bombarding someone with multiple messages can create stress and resentment. Consider the other person's schedule and communication preferences. Now let's talk about persuasion and influence, the ability to guide others toward your way of thinking or encourage them to take specific actions. Ethical persuasion is about finding common ground and presenting compelling reasons, not about manipulation or coercion. Understanding your audience is crucial for persuasion. What are their values, concerns, and motivations? What problems are they trying to solve? The more you understand their perspective, the better you can frame your message in terms that resonate with them. Use the principle of reciprocity. People tend to want to return favors and feel obligated when someone has helped them. If you've been helpful to someone in the past, they're more likely to be receptive to your requests. Social proof is powerful. People look to others' behavior to guide their own decisions. Phrases like, many of our clients have found, or the most successful teams typically leverage this principle by showing that others have made similar choices. Authority and credibility matter enormously. Establish your expertise and credentials appropriately, but avoid coming across as arrogant. Share relevant experience and knowledge while remaining humble and open to other perspectives. Appeal to both logic and emotion. Present clear, logical arguments supported by evidence, but also help people understand the emotional significance of your message. How will your proposal make their lives better, easier, or more fulfilling? Emma, let's explore networking and small talk, skills that can seem trivial but are actually crucial for building professional and personal relationships. Many English learners struggle with small talk because it seems pointless, but it serves important social functions. Small talk serves as a social lubricant, helping people feel comfortable with each other before diving into more substantive conversations. It's also a way to find common ground and shared interests that can form the foundation of stronger relationships. Master a few reliable small talk topics: weather, current events, non-controversial ones, local happenings, travel, hobbies, and weekend plans. These topics are generally safe and can lead to more interesting conversations. Learn to ask follow-up questions that show genuine interest. If someone mentions they went hiking over the weekend, don't just say, "That's nice." Ask, "Where did you go hiking?" Or, "How was the trail?" Or, "Do you hike often?" These questions encourage people to share more and show that you're genuinely interested. Practice graceful transitions from small talk to more substantial conversations. You might say something like, "Speaking of travel, I've been thinking about our upcoming project and wondering if you've had any thoughts about the logistics." Remember names and personal details. When you see someone again, reference something they mentioned in a previous conversation. How did your daughter's soccer game go? Or, did you end up trying that restaurant you mentioned? These small acknowledgments show that you listen and care about people as individuals. Emma, let's discuss cross-cultural communication, which is especially relevant in our globalized world. When you're communicating in English, you're often interacting with people from many different cultural backgrounds, each bringing their own communication styles and expectations. Direct versus indirect communication styles vary significantly across cultures. Some cultures value straightforward, explicit communication, while others prefer more subtle, contextual approaches. Learn to read cues about which style your conversation partner prefers and adapt accordingly. Concepts of time vary across cultures. Some cultures view punctuality as a sign of respect, while others have more flexible relationships with time. Pay attention to the norms in your environment and adjust your expectations and behavior accordingly. Personal space and physical contact norms differ widely. Some cultures are comfortable with close physical proximity and casual touch, while others prefer more distance. Observe and respect these preferences. Eye contact expectations vary. While many Western cultures see direct eye contact as a sign of honesty and confidence, some cultures consider it disrespectful, especially when speaking to authority figures or elders. Gift giving, greeting customs, and business card etiquette all have cultural components. When in doubt, observe what others do or politely ask about customs if you're unsure. Emma, let's talk about assertiveness, the ability to express your thoughts, feelings, and needs clearly and respectfully while maintaining consideration for others. Many people struggle to find the balance between being too passive and being too aggressive. Assertive communication involves stating your position clearly without apologizing unnecessarily or becoming defensive. Instead of saying, "I'm sorry, but I think maybe we might want to consider," try, "I believe we should consider." The unnecessary apologies and qualifiers can undermine your message. Use I statements to express your needs and feelings without blaming others. "I need more information to make this decision" is more effective than "you haven't given me enough information." Learn to say no gracefully when necessary. You can be helpful and accommodating while still maintaining boundaries. "I'd like to help, but I don't have the bandwidth right now. Could we discuss alternatives?" shows willingness to help while being clear about your limitations. Practice asking for what you need directly. Instead of dropping hints, practice asking for what you need directly. Instead of dropping hints and hoping others will figure out what you want, state your requests clearly. "Could you send me the report by Thursday?" is more effective than "I hope the report will be ready soon." Stand your ground when necessary, but remain open to compromise. Assertiveness doesn't mean being inflexible. It means advocating for your position while remaining open to finding solutions that work for everyone. Emma, now let's explore storytelling as a communication tool. Humans are wired for stories. They help us make sense of information, remember important details, and connect emotionally with messages. Every good story has a structure: setup, conflict, and resolution. The setup introduces the characters and situation. The conflict presents a challenge or problem, and the resolution shows how things worked out. This structure keeps people engaged and helps them follow your narrative. Use sensory details to make your stories vivid and memorable. Instead of saying, "It was a difficult situation," describe what you saw, heard, felt, or experienced. "The room was silent except for the ticking clock as we waited for the decision," creates a much more engaging picture. Use sensory details to make your stories vivid and memorable. How did you feel during different parts of the story? How did others react? Emotions help people connect with your experience and make your stories more compelling. Practice the art of timing and pacing. Know when to speed up and when to slow down, when to pause for effect, and when to provide details versus when to summarize. Good storytelling is as much about rhythm as it is about content. Connect your stories to larger points or lessons. The best professional stories don't just entertain, they illustrate principles, demonstrate problem-solving skills, or show character. End with the "so what? Why does this story matter?" Emma, let's discuss handling mistakes and misunderstandings in communication. Even native speakers make communication errors, so don't let fear of mistakes prevent you from communicating confidently. When you realize you've made a mistake or been misunderstood, address it quickly and directly. "Let me clarify what I meant," or "I think I may have misspoken. What I intended to say was," shows that you're paying attention and care about clear communication. Don't over-apologize for minor language errors. A simple "excuse me" or "let me rephrase that" is usually sufficient. Excessive apologizing can actually draw more attention to mistakes and undermine your confidence. Use misunderstandings as learning opportunities. If someone asks for clarification, pay attention to how they rephrase your idea. This can give you insights into clearer ways to express similar thoughts in the future. Practice recovery phrases for common situations. "Could you repeat that, please? I'm not sure I follow. Could you explain that in a different way?" These phrases buy you time to process information and show that you're engaged in understanding. Remember that communication is a shared responsibility. If there's a misunderstanding, it's not necessarily your fault. Work together to clarify and move forward rather than dwelling on who was unclear. Emma, as we approach the end of our comprehensive exploration of communication skills, let's talk about developing your personal communication style. Effective communication isn't about copying others, it's about being authentically yourself while adapting to different situations. Identify your natural communication strengths. Are you naturally good at listening? Do you tell engaging stories? Are you skilled at asking insightful questions? Build on these strengths while working to develop areas where you're less confident. Observe communicators you admire and analyze what makes them effective. Is it their confidence, their ability to explain complex ideas simply, their warmth and approachability? You can learn techniques from others while maintaining your authentic voice. Practice regularly in low-stakes situations. Every conversation is an opportunity to refine your communication skills. The coffee shop interaction, the elevator chat, the team meeting, they're all practice grounds for becoming a better communicator. Seek feedback from trusted friends, colleagues, or mentors. Ask specific questions like, "How did I come across in that presentation?" or "What could I have done differently in that difficult conversation?" Specific feedback helps you improve more quickly than general comments. Be patient with yourself. Communication skills develop over time through practice and experience. Celebrate small improvements and don't expect perfection immediately. Let's conclude with some practical exercises and challenges you can implement immediately to improve your communication skills. This week, practice active listening in every conversation. Focus completely on what the other person is saying rather than planning your response. Notice how this changes the quality of your interactions. Choose one presentation or speaking opportunity and prepare using the techniques we discussed. Practice your opening hook, organize your content clearly, and rehearse managing your nervousness. Have one difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Use the DESC method we discussed and focus on finding solutions rather than assigning blame. Practice giving someone specific, constructive feedback. Remember to start with positives, be behavior specific, and use I statements. Try telling one story each day, whether it's sharing an experience with a colleague or family member. Focus on including sensory details and connecting your story to a larger point. Work on your nonverbal communication by practicing in front of a mirror or recording yourself. Pay attention to your posture, eye contact, and facial expressions. As we wrap up this comprehensive exploration of effective communication skills, I want to emphasize that becoming a great communicator is a journey, not a destination. Even the most skilled communicators continue learning and improving throughout their lives. The techniques we've discussed today, active listening, clear expression, emotional intelligence, adaptability, and confidence, these are skills that will serve you in every area of your life. Whether you're building relationships, advancing your career, or simply navigating daily interactions, strong communication skills are your gateway to success and fulfillment. Remember that effective communication is ultimately about connection. It's about building bridges between people, creating understanding, and fostering relationships that enrich our lives. When you communicate with intention, empathy, and skill, you're not just exchanging information, you're creating meaningful human connections. I encourage you to approach your communication development with curiosity and patience. Try new techniques, learn from your experiences, and don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice and improve. Thank you for spending this hour with me exploring the fascinating world of effective communication. I hope you feel inspired and equipped to become an even more confident and skilled communicator in English and in life. This is Emma from Artificial Fluency, reminding you that great communication isn't about being perfect. It's about being genuine, intentional, and always willing to learn. Keep practicing, keep growing, and keep connecting with others through the power of effective communication.
Welcome to the Artificial Fluency Podcast. I'm Emma. Before we begin, let me ask you a few questions. Have you ever spent a day in the countryside? What did you do there? How did it feel to be away from the busy city? Try to answer these questions in your mind as you listen today. In this episode, we will hear a real-life story about a trip to the countryside. While listening, you will improve your listening skills by focusing on natural English. And you'll also improve your writing because you can try to describe the story in your own words after listening. If you're new here, welcome. On this channel, the English Pod community, we upload videos every day to help you improve your English. So press the like button and stay with us to learn real English from real stories. Let's begin with today's story. Last weekend, I visited a small village called Greenhill with my wife. We wanted to take a break from the noisy city and spend some quiet time in nature. The village was about 2 hours away from our home. The drive was peaceful. We passed green fields, small rivers, and even a few cows walking near the road. When we reached the village, the air felt fresh and cool. It was quiet. No traffic, no loud sounds, just the wind and the birds. We stayed at a small guest house run by a man named Mr. Thomas. He was around 60 years old and had lived in Greenhill all his life. He welcomed us with a warm smile and offered us fresh apple juice from his own farm. I had never tasted anything so fresh before. It was sweet, cold, and perfect after the long drive. Later, we went for a walk through the fields. My wife pointed out different plants and flowers. She loves gardening, so she was excited to see wild herbs growing naturally. At one point, we met an old lady named Mrs. Clara who was collecting firewood. She smiled and said, "You two must be from the city. You walk too fast." That made us laugh. It's true. In the city, we walk quickly and always look at our phones. But in the countryside, everything is slower. People take their time. They enjoy the moment. In the evening, Mr. Thomas invited us to have dinner with his family. They served us rice, lentils, fresh vegetables, and homemade bread. It reminded me of my childhood when my mother used to cook simple but delicious meals. After dinner, we sat outside under the stars. There were no street lights, so we could see the night sky clearly. It was beautiful. I had forgotten how peaceful silence could be. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds and a rooster. I felt rested and calm. Before we left, Mr. Thomas gave us a small basket of apples to take home. He said, "Take these as a gift from the village." That simple sentence touched me. It reminded me that kindness doesn't need to be big. Even small things can mean a lot. Now, think about this. Have you ever visited a village or the countryside? What did you see, hear, and feel? How was it different from your daily life? Would you like to go back again someday? Try to answer these in your notebook. You can also write a short paragraph about your own countryside experience, or imagine one if you've never been. This will help improve your writing and thinking in English. The next day, after we said goodbye to Mr. Thomas and Mrs. Clara, we took a long walk around the village. It was peaceful. The streets were so quiet that we could hear the wind blowing through the trees. We passed small houses with gardens full of flowers and vegetables. Some of the villagers were sitting outside, chatting with each other. One of the things I noticed about the countryside was how everyone seemed to know each other. In the city, we don't always speak to our neighbors. But in the village, people greet each other every morning. It felt warm and friendly. It reminded me of when I was a child, and everyone in my neighborhood knew each other. We also visited a small lake near the village. The water was clear, and there were ducks swimming happily. We sat by the shore and watched them for a while. It was nice to just sit and relax without feeling rushed. During our time in Green Hill, I also realized how much I had missed nature. I live in a busy city, and sometimes we forget how important it is to connect with the natural world. Being surrounded by trees, fields, and animals made me feel more calm and at peace. Later, we decided to try a local tradition. There's a festival in Green Hill every year where people celebrate the harvest. This time, the festival was a few days away, but we were lucky enough to see some early preparations. Villagers were decorating the streets with flowers and hanging lights. It looked beautiful, and everyone seemed excited. My wife, Sarah, was especially excited about the food. She loves trying new dishes, and the village was known for its homemade cheese and fresh bread. We visited a small shop run by a friendly woman named Linda, who made the cheese herself. We bought a piece, and Sarah couldn't wait to try it. That night, we stayed in a cozy little cabin just outside the village. It was simple, but it had everything we needed. The air was so fresh that we kept the windows open all night. I remember waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of an owl hooting nearby. It was a peaceful sound. The next morning, we were ready to leave. We packed our bags and said goodbye to the village. As we drove back to the city, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the time we spent there. It had been a short trip, but it was exactly what we needed. Now I want you to think for a moment. When was the last time you spent time in nature? What did you do? How did it make you feel? Try to describe it in English. What kind of natural surroundings do you like? Do you prefer the mountains, the beach, or the countryside? Try to write a few sentences about your experience. This will help you practice your English writing skills and also help you express yourself in more detail. What would your perfect trip to the countryside look like? Would you go hiking, visit a small village, or maybe just relax by a lake? Think about the details. What would you see, hear, and do? Write down your thoughts in English. As we continued our time in Green Hill, something special happened. Mr. Thomas told us about his neighbor, David, who owned a small piece of farmland just outside the village. David was in his early 50s, friendly, with a kind face and a calm voice. He invited us to visit his farm, and we happily agreed. We followed a narrow path that led to his land. Along the way, we saw chickens walking freely and a few goats, resting under a tree. The sun was shining, but it wasn't too hot. The air smelled fresh, like grass and flowers. When we reached the farm, David was already waiting for us. He waved and said, "Welcome to my little world." David showed us around. He had apple trees, rows of carrots, tomatoes, and even some pumpkins growing. He explained how he takes care of the plants every day, waking up before sunrise and working until late afternoon. He told us that life on a farm is not easy, but it's honest work. He said, "The land gives you what you give it. If you take care of it, it will take care of you." We helped him water the plants for a while. It wasn't hard, but it made me think about how much time and care farmers put into their work. We also helped him collect eggs from the chicken coop. My wife Sarah was nervous at first because she had never done that before, but David guided her step by step. She smiled when she held a warm egg in her hand for the first time. After the farm visit, David invited us to sit under a big tree near the edge of the field. He brought out a basket with homemade bread, some cheese, and boiled eggs. We sat on a blanket and had a simple countryside lunch. It was quiet. We could hear the wind in the leaves and birds singing in the distance. David told us stories about his childhood. He had grown up in Green Hill and had never left. He said, "Some people like big cities, tall buildings, and busy streets. But me? I like to wake up with the sound of birds and go to sleep with the stars above." His words were simple, but they stayed in my mind. Later that day, we visited a small shop in the village center. It was run by a man named Edward, who made wooden tools and furniture. He showed us how he carved a piece of wood into a spoon. He used only a knife and his hands. Every movement was slow and careful. "It takes time," he said, "but when it's finished, you know it's made with care." Edward told us he had learned this skill from his father and now teaches it to his own son. I could see how proud he was of his work. I picked up one of his handmade chairs and it felt strong and smooth. He said, "Things made by hand carry the spirit of the person who made them." That evening, we joined a small group of villagers who were sitting near the community well. They were talking, sharing stories, and laughing together. An old man named Mr. Henry shared a story about how he once got lost in the forest when he was a boy and how a dog led him back to the village. Everyone laughed, and one of the younger boys asked, "Is that really true?" Mr. Henry just smiled and said, "Maybe." The moment was so special. No one was looking at a phone. No one was rushing. People were just present, enjoying each other's company. That's something I rarely see in the city. There, everyone is in a hurry, always looking at the clock. But in Green Hill, time moved slowly and every moment mattered. Before going to bed, Sarah and I sat on the porch of the guest house. We watched the stars again. It was our last night there. She said, "I feel like I can breathe better here. Life is so peaceful." I nodded. I felt the same way. Being away from noise, stress, and crowds helped me think clearly. It helped me appreciate the little things: fresh air, quiet nights, friendly people, and honest work. Now, I want you to imagine something. Imagine you are standing in a quiet village. You can hear the birds, feel the wind, and smell the fresh bread from a nearby house. What would you do? Who would you speak to? Would you go for a walk or help a farmer in the field? Would you sit near a lake or talk to an old man like Mr. Henry? Try to describe your own countryside trip. Use easy English. Write about what you saw, what you ate, and how you felt. This will help you think in English and improve your writing skills. Also, when you listen to a real story like this one, try to focus on how words are used. Listen for verbs, adjectives, and simple phrases. Repeat them. Try to use them in your own sentences. For example, the air felt fresh. The village was quiet. People were kind and friendly. We sat under a tree. These kinds of simple sentences are very powerful. They help you speak clearly and naturally in English. The next morning in Green Hill, something special happened. It wasn't big or loud, but it stayed in my memory clearly. After breakfast, Mr. Thomas invited us to help on his farm. At first, I was a little unsure. I had never worked on a farm before, but I thought, why not? It could be a good experience. Sarah smiled and said, "Let's do it. It sounds fun." So we changed into some old clothes that Mr. Thomas gave us. They were a bit big, but we didn't mind. He handed us each a pair of gloves and led us out to the field. The sun was already shining, but the morning air was still cool. You could hear birds chirping and the gentle sound of the wind moving through the grass. Mr. Thomas's farm was peaceful and full of life. There were rows of vegetables: carrots, potatoes, tomatoes, and onions. He showed us how to gently pull the carrots out of the ground and shake off the dirt. It was actually kind of fun. The soil was soft, and the carrots were big and orange. Sarah pulled one up and laughed. "Look at this one. It has 2 legs." We all laughed together. Then we moved on to picking tomatoes. Mr. Thomas said, "Pick the ones that are red and firm, not soft. Those are ready." It was a slow, steady job, but very calming. The fresh smell of the plants, the sunshine on our backs, and the kind words from Mr. Thomas made it a really relaxing time. After about an hour, we took a short break under a tree. Mrs. Thomas came out with cold lemonade and homemade cookies. They were sweet and buttery, with a little bit of cinnamon. We sat on a bench, sipping our drinks, looking out over the fields. Sarah leaned over to me and said, "I wish every day could feel this quiet." Later, Mr. Thomas showed us the chicken coop. There were about 20 chickens inside. He opened the small door and said, "Want to try collecting some eggs?" I wasn't sure at first, but he showed me how to reach into the straw and gently pick up the eggs without scaring the chickens. We each filled a small basket with fresh brown eggs. It felt so different from buying eggs at the store. Here, you could see where the food came from. After lunch, we decided to visit a nearby river. The river was just a short walk from the farm, and the path was lined with trees. It was quiet, and the only sound was the flowing water. When we arrived, we sat on the rocks near the edge and took off our shoes. The water was cool and refreshing. I dipped my feet in, and Sarah did the same. A boy named David came by with his dog, Max. He smiled and said, "This is the best place to cool down. Max loves swimming here." The dog jumped into the river and splashed around happily. We talked with David for a while. He was about 15 and said he helped his parents on their farm every weekend. He told us stories about fishing with his grandfather and catching frogs with his cousins. His stories were simple but full of joy. It reminded me of my own childhood, playing outside for hours without phones or screens. We asked David if he knew any good places to hike nearby. He pointed to a small hill across the river and said, "There's an old tree up there. People say it's over 100 years old. It's a nice spot to sit and see the sunset." We thanked him and decided to try it out. The hike wasn't too long, but it was a bit steep. As we climbed, I looked back and saw the whole village getting smaller behind us. You could see the farms, the little houses, and the church tower in the middle of the village. It was like a painting. When we reached the top, we saw the tree. It was big with strong branches and a thick trunk. Its leaves made a wide shadow, and we sat under it to rest. We watched the sun go down slowly. The sky turned orange, pink, and then deep purple. Sarah whispered, "It's like time has stopped." We didn't say much after that. We just sat in silence, listening to the wind in the leaves and watching the sky change color. As we walked back to the guest house in the dark, we used a small flashlight to see the path. The village was quiet. No loud cars, no traffic, no city noise, just peace. When we reached the guest house, Mr. Thomas met us at the door. He said, "You two look like you had a full day." We smiled and nodded. The next day was our last in Green Hill, so we wanted to do something special. We woke up early and visited the small village school. It was a one-room building, and the teacher, Mrs. Parker, was already there preparing her lessons. She welcomed us and said, "Would you like to meet the students? They love visitors." We agreed, and a few minutes later, about 10 children came into the room. They were between 6 and 10 years old, full of energy and curiosity. Mrs. Parker asked us to talk a little about our life in the city. I told them about my job, the tall buildings, and how busy the streets are. Sarah talked about working from home and taking care of the garden on weekends. Then the children asked questions. One girl named Emily asked, "Do you have cows in your city?" I laughed and said, "No, not really, but I saw some here yesterday." A boy named Ben asked, "Is it noisy in your city?" I said, "Very noisy. That's why I love the quiet here so much." We played a few games with the kids and helped them with a drawing activity. They were drawing pictures of their favorite places. Some drew the river, others the farms, or the big tree on the hill. I noticed one boy drew a picture of his family having dinner at home. I asked him about it, and he said, "We eat together every night. It's the best part of my day." Hearing that made me think. In the city, it's easy to forget these small but important moments. Eating together, playing outside, talking face to face. These things bring real happiness. Before we left, the children gave us a handmade thank you card. It said, "Thank you for visiting our school. Please come back again." It was a simple card, but it meant a lot. I put it carefully in my bag so I wouldn't lose it. That afternoon, we walked through the village one last time. We said goodbye to George at the shop, waved to David and Max near the river, and stopped by the cafe to thank Mark and Helen for their warm coffee and kind words. Everyone seemed to smile and say, "Come back soon." That evening, as I packed my bag, I thought about everything we had done. The fresh air, the people, the peaceful life, the animals, the school children, and even the vegetables we picked. It wasn't just a holiday, it was a chance to live differently, to slow down, and to see life in a new way. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever visited the countryside? What did you do there? What sounds did you hear? What kind of people did you meet? If you haven't visited yet, can you imagine what it would be like? Use your English to describe it. You don't need big words, just share what you see in your mind. The next day, we decided to take a different kind of adventure. Instead of working on the farm or walking through the village, Mr. Thomas suggested we explore the nearby forest. Sarah and I were excited. The forest was known for its tall trees and peaceful atmosphere. Mr. Thomas said it was his favorite place to visit when he wanted to clear his mind. We started early in the morning. The weather was perfect, cool with a light breeze. As we walked along the dirt path, the trees around us grew taller and thicker. The sunlight barely reached the ground through the thick canopy above. It was like stepping into another world. The air smelled fresh, full of earth and leaves. And it was so quiet. The only sounds were the crunch of the leaves beneath our feet and the occasional birds singing high up in the trees. Mr. Thomas pointed out different plants and trees along the way. He told us that the forest was full of history. Some of the trees were hundreds of years old. He said that during the winter, the forest would be covered in snow, and it looked like something out of a fairy tale. He also mentioned that many people in the village came here to find peace and clear their minds. Sarah and I were happy to be a part of it. As we continued walking, we came across a small stream. The water was clear and flowed gently over smooth rocks. It made a soft, soothing sound. We stopped for a moment to rest and listen. Mr. Thomas said, "This is where I like to come and think. You can sit by the water and listen to the sounds of nature. It's very relaxing." We sat on some large rocks next to the stream and closed our eyes for a few minutes, just taking in the peace of the forest. The cool air, the sound of the water, and the quiet surroundings made everything feel calm. It was a nice change from the busy, noisy world we were used to. After a while, we continued walking along the path. The trees seemed to get even taller as we went deeper into the forest. Mr. Thomas told us about the wildlife in the area. He mentioned deer, rabbits, and even wild boars that lived in the forest. He also said that sometimes people would see foxes or squirrels jumping from tree to tree. We didn't see any animals that day, but it was still exciting to know they were out there somewhere. At one point, we reached a clearing in the forest. In the middle of the clearing was a huge, ancient oak tree. It was the biggest tree I had ever seen. Its trunk was thick, and its branches spread out wide, almost as if they were trying to touch the sky. Mr. Thomas said this was a special tree. He called it the heart of the forest. People from the village would come here sometimes to sit and think, or even have small celebrations. Sarah was fascinated by the tree. She walked around it, touching the rough bark and looking up at the branches. She said, "It's so big. I feel like it has its own story to tell." I agreed. The tree seemed old, wise, and full of secrets. I couldn't help but think about how many years it had stood there, watching everything around it change. Mr. Thomas told us that the tree had been there for more than 300 years. And in all that time, it had seen the village grow, the people come and go, and the world change in so many ways. We spent some time there, just sitting and enjoying the quiet. Mr. Thomas shared a story with us about his grandfather, who used to bring him to this spot when he was a boy. He said his grandfather believed the tree had a kind of magic to it. If you sat quietly and made a wish, the tree would grant it. Of course, Mr. Thomas wasn't sure if that was true, but he said it always made him feel good to sit under the tree and think about the future. It was amazing how much history was packed into that one place. It felt like time had stopped in the forest. There was no rush, no deadline, just the beauty of nature and the quiet of the woods. As we left the clearing and headed back to the village, we talked about how different life felt in Greenhill. In the city, everything was fast-paced. People were always in a hurry. But here, people took their time. They took care of their land, spent time with their families, and made time for the things that really mattered. I thought about my own life back home and how often I rushed through things. It made me wonder if I should slow down sometimes and focus on the small moments. That evening, we returned to the guest house and shared our experiences with Mr. and Mrs. Thomas. They were curious about our trip to the forest and loved hearing our stories. We told them about the big oak tree and how peaceful it was by the stream. Mrs. Thomas smiled and said, "You two have experienced something special. Not everyone gets to enjoy the forest in such a peaceful way." After dinner, we went outside to look at the stars. The sky was clear and the stars were bright. We lay on the grass for a while, just staring up at the sky. It was a perfect ending to a perfect day. As we lay there, I thought about all the things we had seen and done in Greenhill. It wasn't a place full of excitement or big events, but it was full of simple pleasures. Spending time with the Thomases, working on the farm, walking in the forest, and just enjoying nature. These were the things that made the trip memorable. And now, I want to ask you, what about you? Do you enjoy spending time in nature? Do you like hiking, walking by a stream, or simply sitting under a big tree? Imagine you are in the countryside right now. Can you describe what you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? Take a moment to picture it and try to use your English to explain it. You don't need to know all the words. Just focus on describing the things that matter to you. This is how you can practice speaking and writing English by sharing the small details of your life. The more you describe, the better you will get at using English to tell your own stories. Now, if you want to, you can close your eyes for a moment and think about your own ideal trip to the countryside. What would you do? What would you see? Try to use your imagination to practice your English. You could even write it down later, or tell a friend about it. The next morning, Sarah and I woke up early, feeling refreshed after a peaceful night's sleep. We could hear birds chirping outside the window and the sound of leaves rustling in the breeze. It was a beautiful day, and we were both excited to see more of Greenhill. Over breakfast, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas shared some ideas for the day. They mentioned taking a walk through the village and visiting some of the local spots, including the old chapel and the village market. It was clear that there was a lot to discover in this small, peaceful place. After breakfast, we put on our shoes and headed outside ready to explore. We started walking down the narrow road that led into the village. The houses were made of stone, with ivy climbing up the walls, and the gardens were full of flowers in every color. The air smelled fresh and clean, filled with the scent of flowers, grass, and the earth. The road was quiet, with only the sound of birds and the occasional passing car. As we walked, Mr. Thomas pointed out different places of interest. He told us that Greenhill had a long history. The village had been around for hundreds of years, and the people here took great pride in their traditions. He mentioned the local church, which had been built in the 1600s, and how it was a place where many important events in the village had taken place. We stopped for a moment to admire the church. It had tall stone walls and a beautiful bell tower that could be seen from almost anywhere in the village. Next, we walked to the village market, where many of the locals sold fresh produce, handmade, goods, and homemade baked items. It was a small market, but it was full of life and color. The stands were packed with fresh vegetables, fruits, and flowers. There was a stall selling homemade bread and pastries, and the smell was so delicious that we couldn't resist buying a loaf of bread and some pastries to take with us. Sarah and I walked through the market, looking at everything the vendors had to offer. We stopped to talk to one of the local farmers who was selling fresh tomatoes. Mr. Thomas introduced us, and the farmer, whose name was John, told us about his farm. He explained how he grew the tomatoes using organic methods, without any chemicals. John even invited us to visit his farm later in the week to see how the tomatoes were grown. It was nice to meet someone so passionate about his work, and we agreed to take him up on his offer. After spending some time at the market, we decided to take a break and sit in the village square. There was a small cafe with tables set up outside, and we ordered some coffee and tea. As we sat down, we could hear the sound of children playing in the distance and the chatter of people enjoying their day. The atmosphere was so relaxing. It was clear that in Greenhill, life moved at a slower pace, and the people here valued their time and relationships with each other. While we sat, Mr. Thomas shared more stories about his life in the village. He told us that he had grown up here and had never lived anywhere else. He spoke fondly of his childhood, when he would run around the village with his friends, playing games and exploring the countryside. His stories reminded me of my own childhood, when I would spend time outside with my friends, exploring the parks and forests near my house. It made me realize how important it is to spend time in nature and to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. As we continued to talk, Mrs. Thomas joined us with a basket of homemade cookies. She had baked them earlier in the day, and they smelled amazing. We all enjoyed the cookies with our drinks and shared more stories about our lives. Sarah and I talked about our experiences in the city, and Mr. and Mrs. Thomas shared more about their life in the countryside. It was so interesting to hear about their different experiences, and it made me appreciate how diverse life can be, even in different parts of the same country. After our break, we decided to visit the local chapel. It was a beautiful building, with tall stained glass windows and a peaceful atmosphere. We walked inside and took a moment to admire the artwork and the peaceful environment. It was a place of quiet reflection, and we all sat for a moment in silence. Mr. Thomas told us that the chapel had been a place of comfort and support for the villagers during difficult times. Many people came here to pray, seek guidance, or simply find a moment of peace. It was a nice reminder of the importance of having a place to reflect and recharge, no matter where you are. As we left the chapel, we took a short walk to a nearby hill where we could see the whole village. From the top, we could see the fields, the village houses, the market square, and the church in the distance. The view was breathtaking. It was easy to see why people loved living in Green Hill. The landscape was beautiful, and the village felt like a close-knit community. Mr. Thomas said that the hill was his favorite place to come and think. He often visited to clear his mind and appreciate the beauty around him. We stayed at the top of the hill for a while, taking in the view and enjoying the fresh air. Sarah and I talked about how different life was here compared to the busy city life we were used to. It was a reminder of how important it is to slow down and appreciate the small moments in life. We talked about how we would take some of the peacefulness of Green Hill with us when we returned home. Later that afternoon, we made our way back to the guest house. The day had been full of experiences, walking through the village, meeting the locals, visiting the chapel, and enjoying the countryside. We felt grateful for the opportunity to see this side of life. As we walked back, I couldn't help but think about how much I had learned in just a few days. I had learned about the importance of nature, the value of community, and the simple pleasures of life. That evening, we had a delicious dinner at the guest house. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas had prepared a traditional countryside meal with fresh vegetables, homemade bread, and roasted meat. The meal was delicious, and we all sat together at the table, enjoying the food and each other's company. It was a perfect end to a perfect day. After dinner, we decided to take another walk around the village. The streets were quiet, and the village looked even more beautiful at night, with the lights from the houses shining in the distance. It was a peaceful moment, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of calm. As we walked, I asked Sarah what her favorite part of the day had been. She thought for a moment and said, "I think it was the time we spent by the stream in the forest. It was so peaceful, and it felt like we were the only ones there." I agreed. That had been one of my favorite moments too. The quiet of the forest, the sound of the stream, and the peacefulness of the surroundings had made it a special experience. Now, I want to ask you, what about you? Have you ever spent time in the countryside, walking through nature, or exploring small villages? What did you enjoy most about it? If you haven't had that experience yet, imagine what it would be like. What would you do? Where would you go? Practice your English by describing your ideal day in the countryside. The next day, we woke up early, eager to experience more of Green Hill. The sun was shining brightly through the windows, and the birds were already awake, chirping away. It was the perfect start to another beautiful day in the countryside. We had breakfast with Mr. and Mrs. Thomas, and as usual, they were full of energy and ready to show us more of the village. After breakfast, we decided to take a longer walk. This time, Mr. Thomas suggested we visit a nearby forest. He explained that the forest was a special place, full of tall trees, winding paths, and a stream that ran through it. He said it was a peaceful spot where many locals like to go for walks, have picnics, or just spend some quiet time. Sarah and I were excited about this plan, as we both loved being outdoors and surrounded by nature. We grabbed our backpacks, filled with some snacks and water, and set off toward the forest. The path was narrow and winding, with the occasional rabbit or squirrel running across. The air smelled fresh, and the sounds of the forest surrounded us, the rustling leaves, the birds singing, and the distant sound of the stream. It was a far cry from the busy streets of the city, and we both felt a sense of calm and happiness. As we walked deeper into the forest, we came to a clearing by the stream. The water was clear and sparkling in the sunlight, and we could see fish swimming lazily in the shallows. The trees were tall, their leaves creating a natural canopy above us. Mr. Thomas mentioned that this spot had been here for hundreds of years, and it was a place of great beauty and peace. We sat down on the grass by the stream and took in the surroundings. It was such a quiet, peaceful place. We all sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the sound of the water and the birds in the trees. It felt like the world had slowed down, and it made me realize how important it was to take breaks and enjoy nature. I shared my thoughts with Cele, and she agreed. We both felt that spending time in nature like this was good for our mental health. It allowed us to relax, recharge, and simply enjoy the beauty of the world around us. After spending some time at the stream, we decided to continue our walk. Mr. Thomas led us to a part of the forest where there was a small wooden bridge crossing the stream. The bridge was old, but it looked sturdy. As we crossed it, Cele and I joked about how it looked like something from an adventure movie. We laughed, and it was nice to feel so carefree in such a beautiful setting. On the other side of the bridge, the forest became even denser. The trees were thick, their branches twisting and turning above us. There were few paths, and we had to step carefully over the roots and rocks. Mr. Thomas pointed out different plants and trees, explaining their names and how they grew. It was like a living classroom, and I was amazed by all the knowledge he had about the forest. As we walked, we came across a small waterfall. It wasn't very big, but the sound of the water rushing over the rocks was calming and soothing. Cele and I stood there for a moment, watching the water as it cascaded down into the pool below. It was a beautiful sight, and it reminded me of how important it was to find moments of peace in our busy lives. As we ate, we talked about our plans for the next day. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas suggested we visit a nearby village for a traditional market day. The village was known for its handmade crafts and local products, and they thought it would be a fun experience. Cele and I were excited about the idea and agreed to go. After dinner, we went for a walk around the village, enjoying the calm night air. The streets were quiet and the houses were lit by soft, warm lights. We stopped for a moment to admire the view of the stars in the clear sky. It was a peaceful end to a wonderful day. The next morning, we set off early for the nearby village. The journey was short, but beautiful, and as we drove, Mr. Thomas pointed out more interesting sights along the way. He told us about the history of the village we were visiting, how it had been established hundreds of years ago, and how the community had worked together to build a strong, supportive environment. We arrived at the market and were immediately impressed by how lively it was. Stalls were filled with handmade crafts, fresh produce, and local products. There was a sense of community in the air, and we felt like we were part of something special. We spent the morning exploring the market, talking to the vendors, and buying some souvenirs to take home. It was a great way to end our trip to the countryside, and we both agreed that we would miss the peacefulness and beauty of Green Hill. Now, I want to ask you, have you ever visited a small village or spent time in the countryside? What did you do there? How did it make you feel? If you haven't had that experience yet, what would you like to do if you had the chance? Think about the activities you would enjoy and practice describing them in English. The next day, after a restful night's sleep, we decided to explore some more of Green Hill. The morning air was crisp and refreshing, and as we left the guest house, we could already feel the excitement building for another adventure. Mrs. Thomas had prepared a lovely breakfast for us: fresh bread, butter, jam, and eggs. It was a simple but delicious meal, and we all sat around the table, enjoying the warmth of the food and the cozy atmosphere. Over breakfast, Mr. Thomas told us about some hidden gems in the countryside that we hadn't seen yet. One place he recommended was a peaceful hilltop that provided a panoramic view of the village and the fields around it. He explained that from the hilltop, you could see the whole landscape stretching out, with the green fields, the small houses, and even the distant woods. Cele and I were eager to go, and we quickly agreed to take a walk up to the hill. After breakfast, we packed a small bag with some snacks and water, and we set off toward the hill. The path to the hill was a little steeper than we expected, but it wasn't too difficult. We passed by more farms, with cows grazing peacefully and chickens pecking around the yard. The houses we passed were all made of stone or brick, with red roofs and neat gardens. It was easy to see that the people in this village took great pride in their homes and their land. As we climbed higher, the view started to open up. The houses below us began to look smaller, and the green fields spread out in every direction. The sky was a deep blue, and the sun was shining brightly. There were a few clouds in the sky, but they were fluffy and white, adding to the beauty of the scene. It felt like we were walking in a painting. Everything looked so perfect and peaceful. When we finally reached the top of the hill, we were all breathless but happy. The view was even more stunning than we had imagined. We could see the whole village of Green Hill, with its small streets, the church at the center, and the winding river that passed through the area. In the distance, there were rolling hills and thick forests, their green colors blending into the horizon. It was the kind of view that made you feel small and connected to the world at the same time. We spent some time at the top, taking photos, talking about how lucky we were to be there, and just enjoying the moment. It was so peaceful. There was no rush, no noise, just the sound of the wind and the occasional bird flying overhead. It felt like a perfect escape from the busy life we had back home. Sarah shared with me how she felt about this experience. She said, "It's hard to explain, but being up here just makes everything feel so simple. There's nothing complicated about it. It's just the view, the air, and the feeling of being at peace." I agreed with her completely. There was something magical about being in nature, away from the distractions of everyday life. After a while, we decided to head back down, but we weren't in any hurry. The walk down the hill was much easier, and we took our time, enjoying the beauty of the surroundings. As we walked, we talked more about how different life was here compared to the city. The pace of life was slower, and the people seemed more relaxed. It was clear that the countryside offered a lifestyle that many people in the city could only dream of. When we returned to the village, we felt like we had experienced something truly special. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas were waiting for us, and we were eager to share our adventure with them. They were happy to hear about our experience and suggested we take a break before going on our next adventure. They recommended we visit a local farm where we could see how people here grew their food and took care of the animals. We were excited about the idea, so we decided to spend the afternoon at the farm. The farm was only a short walk from the guest house, so we made our way over after resting for a bit. As we arrived, we were greeted by the farmer, a friendly man named James, who introduced us to his animals. He had cows, sheep, chickens, and even a few pigs. Sarah and I were both fascinated by the animals, and we asked James a lot of questions about how he took care of them. James explained that he had been running the farm for many years, and that it was a family business passed down from generation to generation. He shared stories about the history of the farm and how the land had changed over time. As we toured the farm, we learned a lot about farming life. We saw how the animals were fed, how the crops were grown, and how everything on the farm worked together to create a sustainable way of life. One of the most interesting parts of the tour was when James showed us how the cows were milked. He explained the process in detail, and Sarah and I had the chance to try milking a cow ourselves. It was harder than it looked, but we had fun trying. James also taught us about the different types of milk and how it's used in making cheese and other dairy products. We were amazed at how much work went into running a farm, and it made us appreciate the food we eat even more. After the tour, James invited us to sit down for a simple meal made from fresh ingredients grown on the farm. It was a delicious meal. Fresh bread, cheese, vegetables, and homemade jam. We all sat together at a long wooden table, enjoying the food and the company. It felt so satisfying to eat food that had been grown and prepared right there on the farm. The whole experience gave us a deeper understanding of where our food comes from and how much effort is put into making sure we have fresh, healthy ingredients to eat. As the day came to a close, we walked back to the guest house, feeling grateful for the amazing experiences we had in Green Hill. It had been a day full of new discoveries, beautiful views, peaceful moments, and a deeper connection to nature. We both agreed that this trip had been one of the most memorable of our lives. It had reminded us of the simple joys in life, like spending time in nature, connecting with people, and appreciating the beauty of the world around us. Now, I want to ask you, have you ever visited a farm or spent time learning about where your food comes from? What did you learn from that experience? If you haven't had that opportunity yet, what would you like to know about farming and the countryside? Take a moment to think about it and practice describing your experience in English. The next day, we decided to explore more of the countryside, as we hadn't seen everything Green Hill had to offer. We woke up early to make the most of the day. Mrs. Thomas, the owner of the guest house, had prepared another wonderful breakfast. For us, this time it was warm porridge, served with fresh fruit and honey. We sat at the dining table, enjoying the food and chatting about what we wanted to do that day. Mrs. Thomas mentioned a local market in a nearby village, and we thought it would be a great way to learn more about the area. After breakfast, we walked to the village market, which was about a half-hour's walk from Green Hill. On the way there, we passed more farms and fields with the sun shining brightly overhead. It was such a peaceful walk, with the only sounds being the birds singing and the rustling of the leaves in the trees. We talked about the things we had seen and how nice it was to be in a place so quiet and calm compared to the hustle and bustle of the city. When we reached the market, we were surprised by how busy it was. There were many stalls selling fresh vegetables, fruits, homemade jams, bread, and local crafts. The smell of fresh food filled the air, and it was easy to see that this was a very important part of life in the village. People were chatting with each other, picking out fresh produce, and haggling over prices. It felt very different from the markets back home, which were often crowded and noisy. Sarah and I decided to take a look around and see what we could find. We first visited a stall selling fresh vegetables. The vegetables were so vibrant in color: deep green lettuce, bright red tomatoes, and golden carrots. The farmer at the stall was an older man named Mr. Williams, who smiled at us and welcomed us to his stall. He explained that his farm was just down the road and that everything he sold was grown without any chemicals. He even offered us a taste of his tomatoes, which were incredibly sweet and juicy. We couldn't resist and bought a few to take back to the guest house. Next, we visited a stall where a lady named Mrs. Bennett was selling homemade jams. She had a variety of jams: strawberry, raspberry, and even some unusual flavors like apple and cinnamon. We spent a few minutes talking with her, and she shared stories about how she learned to make jam from her grandmother. Sarah and I decided to buy a jar of the strawberry jam, which we were excited to try later. As we continued walking around the market, we noticed a stall selling handmade pottery. The pots and bowls were beautifully crafted, and each piece was unique. The seller, a young man named Tom, explained that he made everything by hand, and each piece took several days to complete. We were so impressed by his work that we decided to buy a small bowl to take home as a souvenir. It was a perfect reminder of our time in Green Hill. After spending some time at the market, we met up with Mr. and Mrs. Thomas, who had also been exploring the stalls. They were happy to see that we had enjoyed the market and bought some local products. They suggested we head to a nearby lake for a peaceful walk. We were all eager to explore more of the countryside, so we agreed and set off in the direction of the lake. The walk to the lake was a little longer, but it was worth every step. The path led us through dense woods with tall trees surrounding us on all sides. The air smelled fresh and earthy, and we could hear the crunch of leaves underfoot as we walked. We passed a few more farms along the way, and we even saw a family of deer grazing in a field. It was amazing to see wild animals in their natural habitat, and we stopped for a moment to admire the peaceful scene. When we arrived at the lake, it was even more beautiful than we had imagined. The water was calm and clear, reflecting the blue sky above. There were a few boats on the shore, but other than that, the lake was quiet and serene. We decided to take a short boat ride across